Greetings from the Rondout Valley Sanctuary on this very cold January afternoon as the sun sinks below the horizon. I had hoped when I went onto the county COVID-19 dashboard earlier today to find that the cases were finally declining locally and throughout the county, and that I would be able to then say, well, you know, 1 week very, very soon we will gather again for in-person worship as well as pre-recorded. But that was not the news that awaited me on the county dashboard. The cases are actually going up in Marbletown this week and in some of the surrounding communities as well. So for the immediate future, we will continue to be pre-recorded only. As I say, that's not what I wanted to see, but I have gotten it through my stubborn head that that is the way it is right now. That got me thinking some of the ancient prophets and how often the messages that they had to relay to us were not ones that people really wanted to hear. I picked a book off my bookshelf, Frederick Buechner's Wishful Thinking, a Theological ABC. This particular edition was published in 1973. And he has some pithy words about prophets. Prophet, he writes, means spokesman, not fortune teller, the one whom in their unfathomable audacity the prophets claim to speak for was the Lord and Creator of the universe. There is no evidence to suggest that anyone ever asked a prophet home for supper more than once. The prophet Jeremiah showed a clay pot to a crowd of Judeans and told them it represented Judah. Then he smashed it to smithereens and told them that this was an expurgated version of what God had in mind to do to them. He was right. Then he speaks some of the prophet Isaiah, concluding, one also thinks of Jesus of Nazareth, who, when he went back to his hometown, chose this prophet, Isaiah, to read from in the local synagogue in Luke 4. It is the words of this prophet that perhaps describe Jesus best, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. Acquainted with grief. The way Jesus described his mission in the world was to give his life as a ransom for many. The prophets were drunk on God, and in the presence of their terrible tipsiness, no one was ever comfortable. With a total lack of tact, they roared out against phoniness and corruption wherever they found them. They were the terror of kings and priests. The prophet Nathan tells King David to his face that he is a crook and an adulterer. The prophet Jeremiah goes straight to the temple itself and says, do not trust in these deceptive words. This is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. It was like a prophet to say it 3 times, just to make sure. Buechner finishes this piece by saying, like Robert Frost's, a prophet's quarrel with the world is deep down a lover's quarrel. If they didn't love the world, they probably wouldn't bother to tell it that it's going to hell. They'd just let it go. Their quarrel is God's quarrel. May we who have ears to hear, hear, and God be with you till we meet again.